In 1984, kickboxing legend Benny "the Jet" Urquidez squared off against Jackie Chan inside a Spanish castle, creating a fight scene that would change martial arts cinema forever. Chan, already one of the biggest action stars in Asia, faced an American fighter most viewers had never heard of. The hits were real, the falls were brutal, and at one moment, Urquidez threw a wheel kick so impossibly fast that it blew out an entire row of candles without any camera tricks or special effects. No CGI, no editing magic, just pure speed that the human eye could barely register. The question nobody thought to ask was this: how did a kickboxer from Tarzana, California, end up in a Hong Kong production directed by Sammo fighting the most famous martial arts actor on the planet? The answer reveals something far more interesting than any movie plot. It reveals a fighter who was so dominant in his sport that his own country essentially exiled him. A man who held 6 world titles across 5 weight divisions, went virtually undefeated for 27 years, and competed in an era before the UFC existed, essentially creating Proto MMA before mixed martial arts had a name. A legend who trained everyone from Patrick Swayze to Van Halen's David Lee Roth, yet somehow never became the household name his skills demanded. This is the story of the fighter who was too dangerous for the movies to know what to do with. Benny Urquidez came into this world already prepared for combat. Born in 1952 in Tarzana, California, his family tree reads like a fight card. His father, Arnold, was a professional boxer. His mother, Lupe, was a professional wrestler in the 1940s. Out of 9 children, most would earn black belts, and his sister Lily would become a pioneer for women in kickboxing. But Benny was different. While other 5-year-olds played with toy trucks, little Benny was competing in Pee-wee boxing at the legendary Olympic Auditorium in Los Angeles. By age 7, he started formal martial arts training. By 14, he earned his black belt, a feat so rare in the 1960s that many instructors refused to believe it was possible. But the moment that truly shaped his destiny came in 1964, when 12-year-old Benny attended the Long Beach International Karate Championships. This was the tournament where Bruce Lee first introduced himself to the American martial arts community. The young Urquidez watched as Lee demonstrated his famous 1-inch punch, sending a 245-pound man flying backwards into a chair. The crowd gasped, but while everyone else saw a demonstration, Benny saw his future. "I jump up and say, 'I want to do that,'" he would later recall. That single moment lit a fire that would burn for the next 6 decades. He threw himself into tournament competition, quickly earning a reputation as one of the most colorful and aggressive fighters on the circuit. In 1973, he fought John Natividad in what's still considered one of the greatest non-contact bouts in history, a match that went into an unprecedented 25-point overtime. He lost by a single point. But point fighting, where competitors pulled their strikes, wasn't satisfying the hunger that Bruce Lee had ignited in him. When full-contact karate emerged in America in 1974, Benny didn't hesitate. He wanted to hit people for real, and he wanted them to hit him back. The transition from point fighting to full contact separated the pretenders from the authentic. Many tournament champions discovered that theoretical technique crumbles when someone is genuinely trying to knock you unconscious. Benny discovered the opposite. He was born for this. His first major full-contact victory came at the 1974 World Series of Martial Arts Championship in Hawaii. This wasn't some regulated sporting event with careful weight classes and protective equipment. This was essentially a tough man contest with minimal rules. Benny weighed 145 pounds. Some of his opponents weighed over 225. He fought 7 men in 2 days and beat them all. Before entering, he turned down an offer to become a professional boxer. After that weekend in Hawaii, everyone understood why boxing would have been a step down. Over the next few years, he tore through every organization that would sanction him. The PKA, the WKA, the NAKL, Japanese organizations, Thai organizations. While contemporaries like Bill Superfoot Wallace dominated the PKA lightweight division, and Joe Louis established himself as the first professional kickboxer, Benny was conquering multiple weight classes simultaneously. The rules changed constantly. The opponents came from every fighting discipline imaginable, and Benny kept winning. By 1977, he held 6 world titles across 5 different weight divisions, a feat of versatility that remains virtually unmatched. Black Belt magazine named him Competitor of the Year in 1978. His nickname, the Jet, came from witnesses who couldn't believe the speed of his spinning back kick. It wasn't marketing. It was just an accurate description. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. The same American organizations that should have been celebrating their homegrown champion instead turned on him. The PKA stripped Benny of his lightweight title for the crime of fighting overseas under different sanctioning bodies. The politics of martial arts organizations in the 1970s were vicious, with rival groups fighting for legitimacy and television contracts. Benny refused to be anyone's exclusive property. He wanted to fight the best fighters in the world, regardless of which organization sanctioned the bout. For that independence, he was essentially blackballed from competing in his own country. The record books reflect this chaos. Benny claims 200 wins and no losses. Official documentation shows 49 wins, 1 loss, and 1 draw with 35 knockouts. Other sources list 63-0 and 1 with 57 knockouts. The discrepancy isn't dishonesty. It's the result of an era when different organizations kept different records, when rules varied wildly from bout to bout, and when political grudges determined whose victories counted and whose didn't. What nobody disputes is this: for 27 years, across every rule set and every weight class, virtually nobody could beat Benny Urquidez. The one loss on his official record came in a Muay Thai match that was supposed to be a no-decision exhibition. He'd agreed to the bout with the explicit understanding that it wouldn't count. When the fight ended, the officials ignored that agreement and ruled against him anyway. Benny and the WKA protested, calling it a no contest, but the damage to his perfect record was done. To this day, it remains one of the most controversial outcomes in kickboxing history. Locked out of American competition by organizational politics and with his undefeated status under attack, Benny did the only thing that made sense. He went to the other side of the world to prove what he was worth. In August 1977, Benny Urquidez arrived in Japan with almost no reputation. Japanese kickboxing was enormously popular with its own established stars and loyal fans who had never heard of this American claiming to be a world champion. His first opponent was Katsuyuki Suzuki, the number 2 ranked fighter in the All Japan Kickboxing Association. The bout took place at the legendary Nippon Budokan Arena as part of an event that also featured pro wrestling legend Antonio Inoki. Nobody expected what happened next. Benny knocked Suzuki out in the 6th round, and suddenly Japanese fight fans had a new obsession. Here was an American who didn't just win, but who fought with a style they'd never seen before. He combined the mobility of American full-contact karate with the power of boxing and the leg attacks of Southeast Asian fighting. He was unpredictable, explosive, and absolutely fearless. 3 months later, the stakes got even higher. The All Japan Kickboxing Association organized a full-scale USA versus Japan event at the Budokan. 7 Americans would face 7 Japanese kickboxers in a night that both countries treated as a matter of national pride. The atmosphere was electric, with Japanese fans desperate to avenge Suzuki's loss and prove their fighters were superior. The night went badly for the Americans. One by one, Benny's teammates fell to the Japanese fighters. By the time Benny stepped into the ring for the main event, 4 Americans had already lost. The weight of his country's reputation sat entirely on his shoulders. His opponent was Kunamatsu Okao, a legend who had retired undefeated after 55 professional bouts. Okao had come out of retirement specifically to destroy this arrogant American who had embarrassed Japanese kickboxing by beating Suzuki. The fight was savage. Okao connected early and knocked Benny down, sending the Japanese crowd into hysterics. But Benny rose immediately, gave his opponent a slight nod of acknowledgement, and went back to work. Over the following rounds, his speed and precision began to overwhelm the veteran. Low kicks buckled Okao's legs. Lightning jabs snapped his head back. The man who had never lost suddenly looked old and outclassed. When it was over, Benny had done what no one else had ever managed. He had beaten Kunamatsu Okao. The victory made him a sensation in Japan. He became the central figure in a documentary manga called The Square Ring. Fight fans who had dismissed him as an unknown now spoke his name with reverence. He returned to Japan repeatedly over the following years, facing Thai fighters under Muay Thai rules, Japanese kickboxers under their rules, anyone who wanted to challenge him under whatever conditions they preferred. Most of the time he won. When he didn't, the circumstances were so controversial that even his opponents struggled to claim legitimate victory. But it was Japan's entertainment industry, not its fighting promotions, that would ultimately give Benny his greatest platform. By the early 1980s, Hong Kong cinema was producing some of the most innovative action films ever made. At the center of this golden age was Jackie Chan, a former opera school student who had reinvented the martial arts movie by combining genuine fighting skill with comedic timing and death-defying stunts. Jackie was always looking for opponents who could challenge him on screen. Fighters whose authentic abilities would elevate his carefully choreographed sequences into something that felt genuinely dangerous. Jackie had seen Benny's fights in Japan. He knew this wasn't some actor who had learned a few kicks for the camera. This was perhaps the most accomplished American kickboxer alive. A man whose speed and power were undeniable, even in grainy bootleg footage. Jackie arranged a meeting, but he wasn't about to cast someone in his film without testing them first. The audition was more like a trial by combat. Jackie demonstrated complex choreography and asked Benny to replicate it. Benny, despite having no formal training in Hong Kong film techniques, mimicked the movements perfectly. Then Jackie asked him to perform a series of flips. Benny wasn't a gymnast. He attempted the flips anyway, slamming into a wall at one point, but refusing to quit until he'd done what was asked. Finally, Benny decided to show Jackie what he could really do. He unleashed a series of kicks that demonstrated why they called him the Jet. Jackie watched, gave him a thumbs up, and from that moment forward never tested him again. The result was Wheels on Meals, a 1984 film directed by Sammo that remains a benchmark for martial arts cinema. The final fight between Jackie Chan and Benny Urquidez is routinely cited as one of the greatest fight scenes ever filmed. Unlike most movie fights where careful camera angles disguise the fact that strikes are missing by comfortable margins, the Wheels on Meals fight features contact that looks genuinely painful because much of it was genuinely painful. Jackie had asked Benny how hard he wanted to go. Benny asked the same question back. They agreed to make it real. The famous candle moment came when Benny threw a wheel kick during a break in the action. The speed of his leg generated enough wind to extinguish the candles behind him. The filmmakers kept it in the movie because no special effect could have replicated what audiences had just witnessed. It was a perfect encapsulation of why Benny Urquidez was different. He wasn't pretending to be dangerous. He simply was dangerous, and the camera couldn't help but capture it. 4 years later, Benny reunited with Jackie for Dragons Forever, another film that climaxed with the two men fighting. Once again, the sequence became legendary among martial arts enthusiasts. Jackie Chan himself has stated publicly that his fights with Benny are among the finest of his entire career. Coming from a man who has staged thousands of on-screen battles across 5 decades, that's not a casual compliment. But here's what makes Benny's Hollywood story so frustrating. Despite proving he could hold the screen against the biggest action star in Asia, American studios never figured out what to do with him. The roles that followed Wheels on Meals and Dragons Forever tell a story of missed potential. Paragraph 11. Benny appeared in Roadhouse, but not as a lead. His primary contribution was training Patrick Swayze to look convincing in the fighting sequences. He showed up in Street Fighter, but again, his main job was preparing the cast for their action scenes rather than taking center stage himself. He played a hitman opposite his longtime student John Cusack in Grosse Pointe Blank, finally getting a memorable villain role. But by then, he was in his mid-40s and the window for action stardom had essentially closed. What Benny became instead was Hollywood's secret weapon. When studios needed someone to make actors look like fighters, they called Benny. When directors needed fight choreography that would hold up under scrutiny from martial arts fans, they called Benny. The list of celebrities who trained with him reads like a guest list for the most exclusive party in entertainment history. David Lee Roth studied under Benny for years. When Van Halen released Jump in 1984, their only song to ever reach #1 on the Billboard charts, Roth dedicated it to his kickboxing instructor. The song's Go For It message about getting up when nothing gets you down reflected the philosophy Benny instilled in his students. John Cusack trained with Benny for decades, eventually casting him in multiple films and reportedly discussing plans to open a gym together. Patrick Swayze credited Benny with teaching him everything he needed to know for Roadhouse. The full client list includes names that span every corner of entertainment. Muhammad Ali, Elvis Presley, Mark Wahlberg, Nicole Kidman, Kurt Russell, Nicolas Cage, Michelle Pfeiffer, Duff McKagan of Guns N' Roses. Each of them sought out Benny Urquidez because they recognized what the studios apparently couldn't. This man was the real thing. In 2000, Benny co-founded the Los Angeles Film Fighting Institute, one of the first schools in America dedicated to teaching martial artists the specific skills required for stunt work. He understood that fighting for the camera was different from fighting in the ring, and he wanted to bridge that gap for the next generation. His own martial art, Urquidez, combined 9 different styles into a philosophy he described as a way of life. It became the only New Age martial arts system officially recognized by the governing bodies of Japan. But while Benny was quietly shaping Hollywood's action landscape from behind the scenes, there was one challenge he famously refused to accept. In the late 1970s, a Brazilian family named Gracie began appearing at martial arts gyms across Southern California, challenging anyone who would face them. Their style, which they called Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, emphasized ground fighting and submission techniques that most American martial artists had never encountered. Rorion Gracie, the family's ambassador in America, made it his mission to prove that his art could defeat any other fighting style. According to the Gracies, Rorion visited Benny's gym around 1978 and sparred with him, dominating the exchange and taking him down repeatedly. According to Benny and those who witnessed the session, nothing of the sort happened. The accounts are completely contradictory and no independent verification exists for either version. What is documented is what happened next. In 1994, after the Gracie family had achieved massive fame through the early UFC events, Rorion officially challenged Benny to a no-holds-barred fight. The negotiation quickly fell apart over money. The Gracies wanted Benny to put up $100,000 of his own money for the privilege of fighting them. Benny's response was logical. If you're the ones challenging me, if you're the ones who think you can beat me and gain recognition from the victory, why would I have to pay you? Rorion refused to accept Benny's counteroffer of a simple personal wager. Royce Gracie then issued his own public challenge, which Benny declined on the grounds that he was retired. Royce responded with an attack piece in Black Belt magazine titled, "Message for Urquidez, Actions Speak Louder Than Words." The Gracies accused Benny of ducking them, of being afraid to face their grappling techniques. What the Gracies apparently didn't know or chose to ignore was that Benny had been training extensively with Gene LeBell, the legendary judoka and catch wrestler who was one of the most respected grapplers in America. Benny was far from ignorant about ground fighting. He simply wasn't willing to accept terms that he considered unreasonable from challengers who seemed more interested in publicity than in a fair contest. The proposed $100,000 challenge never happened. But the myth that the Gracie family offered that amount to anyone who could beat them was born directly from this failed negotiation with Benny Urquidez. The irony is profound. One of the most famous stories in martial arts history, the Gracie challenge, originated partly from an encounter with a man they never actually fought. Most fighters retire before their bodies betray them. They take their records and their memories and step away while they can still walk without pain. Benny Urquidez did things differently. In 1993, at the age of 41, he came out of retirement to face Yoshihisa Tegami, the 25-year-old Japanese champion for the vacant WKA Super Welterweight world title.